After all these years, I myself am still in question of who killed JonBenet Ramsey. We in fact been questioning that for how many years now? And yet the child's case never seems to rest, because anytime you're in and out of Walmart, just like I was a few minutes ago, you see her face on National Enquirer. Yes, because JonBenet Ramsey is in fact, or was, a celebrity herself. I don't think that was her intention to be that young age, but to be a contestant in a pageant, several pageants, is to become that very thing, a celebrity. So the JonBenet Ramsey case will always stand in question. I myself might in fact need to take time to question her as well. Because see, I've questioned Asia Degree, and I'm still not done with that. I've questioned Relisha Rudd. I'm just getting started with that. I want to in fact question Casey Anthony as well as JonBenet Ramsey. But yes, who do you think, you the viewer watching me right now, who do you think killed that young JonBenet Ramsey? Remember when you were a kid and that's all you heard of, and now everywhere you look you see her still being in question? Trust and believe, JonBenet Ramsey case is going to be in question forever, just like Elvis. His death, we know what was his cause of death. Not completely, but sort of, but yes. So, it's presumed by many in the public, even public figures, sense and believe JonBenet's death was caused by either her mother, remember her handwriting? That in itself somewhat speaks a little bit, but not completely. Her father, people question of if her father could have played a part in her death, because he was so quick to try to, yes, his business trip, fly out, despite the young child being, dead. So he, by many, stand questionable. JonBenet Ramsey's father, her brother, because when he's in interviews, he's always somewhat nervous, or he was in the interviews that he was in. So, yeah, still no one knows who in fact killed young JonBenet Ramsey. She would have completely been a young, beautiful adult. I wonder if she, you know what? The most interesting question is if JonBenet Ramsey herself, yes, would have continued to, say, be competing in pageants, other type of pageants, or say if she would have taken the route of, I don't know, actress, such as in movies or music videos or stuff like that. I kind of feel and sense that JonBenet Ramsey would have taken the route of, let me see, possibly like Michael Jackson's daughter, like she's doing. She's somewhat acting, but she's not in pageants or anything like that. The fame aspect, when it pertaining to fame, I sense and believe JonBenet Ramsey would have went that route of some type. Because to be in pageants is to in fact extend off of that in the realm of fame, and questioning what all can you do, pointing in different directions of what all you can do with that. And then depending on, say, her father, they might have possibly led her more into, say, politics, you know, being involved with politicians and all that other stuff. That's what I kind of sense. They would have possibly tried to make her into a small, somewhat Princess Diana type of figure, but not that extreme stature. Something just enough to kind of like, not just get by, but you know what I'm saying. I think she would have did film TV shows, and I think she would have did something with politics or something pertaining to her father or something, because of his connections. So, who do I sense could have killed JonBenet, you ask? From the beginning, I always asked if it was one of the judges. I do. Despite them not having any evidence to say when they stated in media that there was no interest, forced interest of anybody trying to make their way into the house, right, the Ramsey's house, and yet I always sensed, that was in my number one sensing, could a judge, because I never seen anybody question that, or maybe I have and I just didn't pay attention. But that was like my ultimate question. Could a judge of contestants, possibly one of JonBenet Ramsey contestants, her being a contestant, could one of the judges have lusted after her and wanted her? Do you think that? Because you always see the talk of the father, the mother, the brother, and yet you never hear too much, unless say it's possibly a neighbor or somebody that lived right in that area, say where the Ramsey family lived at. But you don't hear too much talk of possibly judges. Because to watch a little girl as beautiful as she was and womanly like, looking like she kind of, not like a Chucky doll, that's not a joke, but she kind of looked half real and not real because of the makeup and everything else and the tiara and all the other stuff. Walking back and forth on stage and prancing is to want, yes, a grown man. Not the child wanting, but a grown man wanting that little girl, her body, because to look at her face is to say, well, what is she? Is she a child? Is she a woman? What is she in that form and fashion? So I think I keep always sensing that, yes, possibly somebody in her family have did that, but anytime she was not a normal, average, everyday little girl. She was and wasn't. When she went home, yes, she was, but when she was on stage, they made her out to be a celebrity figure in a sense. So that, in a sense, is going to draw grown men to you, and it has to, because look at what they're looking at. They're looking at something that's, it's just, yeah, the portrayal of that and that sort of thing, such as pageants, I do agree with, and sometimes I don't agree with it, because sometimes mothers and fathers too, they have a tendency to live through their children, or try to live through their children, where say they had a dream of wanting to be on stages dancing and performing and all that other stuff pertaining to just whatever limelight type of stuff, right? And so what they do, they'll live through their kids. Didn't I state that in another video of mine? They'll live through their kids, and when they're living through their kids in the form of fashion through pageants, sometimes they in fact abuse their kids by malnourishing them, not feeding them properly, making them go on diets. Sometimes their children are forced to actually take diet substances. Yes. They don't always hook up with dietitians, is what I'm saying. They handle the work on their own, because for them, they figure, well, you know, it's less money if I do it myself. And not only that, I don't want the dietitian telling me and my child how to do this or that. There's abuse in that, which is why possibly JonBenet Ramsey's father stated when he came out and said to warn parents that he didn't agree with that, them putting their children into that, because behind closed doors is in fact abuse sometimes. And I've seen and witnessed it, not right in person, but on video. I've witnessed abuse of parents, how they be beating up on their kids and all that other stuff, just to make sure they do right on stage. Who wants it? That's pure hell. That is in fact what that is. So the father, yes, see, there's a grown man lusting issue with that, and why wouldn't there be? I'm sure she was that pretty, depending on how pretty she was around her brother. Not saying her brother could have had something to do with it, but I'm sure a young boy like that, seeing his sister all draped up pretty like that, because to look like a sister and then you don't is to question even the brother, despite me not really believing he could have played a part in that. But remember, JonBenet in fact wore not one faces, but two faces. So for her to have on hair and makeup is to say she looked like a grown woman some time of the day, and then looked like a child other times of the day. And that in a sense would in fact confuse a brother. I'm sure it has and it had to, even from the beginning. Despite them being somewhat close in age, but not completely, were they close in age? So that would give the brother privilege enough to say possibly have been lusting after his own sister, because that's puberty time, somewhere around that. Kinda, but not completely. They were a little bit off in age, but you don't never know what the brother was sensing and thinking and feeling underneath his clothes. while he was looking at his sister, even dressed and draped how she was. But I always, yeah, the judges. Who was JonBenet judges? Because see, to be a contestant is to travel all over places, and sometimes people end up finding out where you live. And not only that, you're being a child on so many different stages is to completely not know what all the men. That's why, I mean, maybe her family did have something to do with it. But say if it was a judge or something. To be in a state is to leave a state. To enter another state is to leave another state. That's too many people to be your child to be surrounded by, who could be lusting after her, who could gain access to your house even if it showed no forced entry. But possibly because the Ramseys had money, maybe they paid off something or something, court system or whatever, to get it out of their hands, as in paid off, so that they're not found guilty. The father, mother, whoever, right? Who knows? But that's just a little extreme to be taking a girl around in random cities and states, exposing her to grown men that are possibly lusting after her. That's hard to detect, is what I'm trying to say, because even if a grown man was to come inside of her house and do something to her and say kill her in the basement or something like that, he possibly could have been from a whole different, completely different state. How is that to be found? That poses an issue, because she was around too many men to begin with, judging her, watching her bop around and sing and dance, and yeah. That's no different than, say, watching Madonna on stage and a whole bunch of random men is sitting in the audience wanting her. They can find out where she live and take advantage in the process. Who knows? Her case is questionable. JonBenet. Yep, her father, I just stated that. Her father didn't want other parents because of the abuse issue in that. And I'm not really saying JonBenet Ramsey's father could have been abusive. Who knows? I didn't live in a house. He might have been. Who knows? But it's just the things that you see with these pageants. You got some parents that in fact will make their child be more than anorexic, as in not eating for days on end just to make sure she's skinny enough to fit in her cute little outfit. That's abuse. So I think my question basically is do you think, who do you think, I just asked that before, didn't I? Who do you think murdered JonBenet Ramsey in the four walls of her house? Down by the cellar area, to be specific. I think it was more so towards a basement, but I saw a cellar, so we kind of keep it there. Who do you think killed that young child for her to be strangled in the way that she was? There's a lot more to that, as in a suspect. Could the father have molested young JonBenet? Because see, to strangle a young child in the way that child was strangled, that's an act of pedophilia as well. Because see, grown men, that's like almost like BDSM, like bondage, how you tie somebody up and then you get off on that, and strangulation. The reason why I say there's more to that is because you have the question of if daddy, as in her father, had a history, a form of fashion of BDSM himself. Did anybody question that? Did JonBenet Ramsey's father have a history of BDSM? Say discipline, sexual discipline and all that other stuff, where you tie people and chain people and all that other stuff to get off on them and all that. And sometimes in that, people have been known to in fact die. Yes, they have. During BDSM, that's why they have it's like these words, like a, not like a practice word, but it's a word that you in fact call out to actually make the individual that's putting the pain on you, forcing the pain on your body or whatnot. You call that word out. It's like a call word, and it makes them stop. Pain and pleasure in sex. But with JonBenet Ramsey, she would have not known about that sort of thing because she was too young to begin with. Usually grown men know about that sort of thing, as well as grown women. I'm thinking somebody, whoever killed JonBenet Ramsey, was into BDSM, as in tying people up sexually. Madonna has done that in her music videos quite a few times. What's that song she had? What's that song Madonna had? I'm trying to think. Because see, you try to leave sex out of stuff like this, such as a child topic, but when it involves an issue like this, as in a child being choked to death or something like that, or neck messed up or altered in her dying based off of something sexual, accidents, it's the question of that pertaining to, okay, what is that? To tie something around somebody's neck and say a child is molested, what is that? That is in fact BDSM. That is what that is. So who had a history with that sort of thing? As in possibly not just taking advantage of a child, but them not seeing her as the child she was because they were so used to seeing her as an adult face. Her face being made up as a woman. Them raping and taking advantage of what they're seeing as a woman, despite her laying there as a child, right? I never heard anybody question that. I never heard on TV. Maybe my eyes weren't completely there, but who all was surrounding JonBenet that was known and prone to get off on the BDSM? Why is that nowhere printed on the TV and not even in National Enquirer? Because even that will spill a lot. That's a science in itself. That's a science in itself. Because if you don't know, that's why I mentioned the contestants, because see, contestants, they be off in all type of things. Judges, people that do all type of stuff like that, sit back watching little girls and getting off on the ideal or even that while you're watching, right? That sort of thing, I'm thinking, was JonBenet Ramsey's neck snapped? I'm gonna have to go back in and even look deeper into that, as in scope that out. But if you don't even question them individuals on the BDSM, that's how people walk away from cases. That is a sickly figure. But gotta blame her parents, because they was in fact the individuals that placed her into that. I'm trying to think, could JonBenet Ramsey's brother, seeming he was nervous and all shaking and looking all anxious while he was in his videos, the interviews that he was doing, could her brother have been into BDSM? As in understanding it, seeming her brother was prone to do weird and crazy things sometimes. Yes, he was, right? Kind of think he could have. But that odd job material of JonBenet Ramsey dying the way she did, it almost looks as if she died by the hands of a grown man and not a boy that did silly and crazy stuff, right? Her case points in different directions as well. But the BDSM stands out the most, because even a young boy could be in that type. A young boy could say put a rope or tie a balloon string around a child's neck and that be that, right? But to say that she was molested in it, and with that too, that it's the question, even various angles around her brother with that. Because just because that was a form of fashion of BDSM don't mean that that was his intention. JonBenet's brother, he could have been doing something crazy, but I look at them judges. I look at all them judges. I look at fans of hers that I ain't never met, JonBenet Ramsey's fans. I look at everybody that surrounded that environment, because that's how you look at something when you're trying to figure out, as in a solving. Who was close by her? Who got off on freaky stuff like that, tying people down and up? I think that's all to be said for this video for now. I might end up questioning more about her case a little bit later, because the tie me down is to say, girl, you are long dead, rest in peace. But that's a hot mess even on the Ramsey end. Why was the father so quick to leave out of town knowing his child was dead? He was trying to hurry up and leave, as in be about his business or something. That was odd. There was a lot of things odd about the whole situation. So that's all for now. I'll be back.